Okay.
And welcome. We're so glad you're here with us, Dr. William Chapman Nyaho, who is live with us from Seattle, right? Where he says recently the temperature was 80 degrees. Here we had snow in Appleton,
Oh my
unfortunately.
gosh.
Um, but I'm just going to read a little bit about you just so we can all get oriented. Okay, so William Chapman Nyaho earned his degrees from St. Peter's College, Oxford University, the Eastman School of Music, and the University of Texas at Austin. He also studied at the Conservatoire de Musique in Geneva, Switzerland. Dr. Chapman Nyaho currently serves on the faculty at Pacific Lutheran University in near Seattle, Tacoma. Is that Tacoma?
Correct.
And runs his private piano studio in Seattle. He is also on the summer faculty of Interlochen Center for the Arts, where I understand he worked at one point with Leonard Hayes, who we all know and who presented to us a couple months ago. Dr. Chapman Yaho has performed in Europe, Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, and North America. And he has at least three recordings of piano music by composers of African descent. Senku, you'll have to
Us.
forgive my, how do you pronounce it? Senku,
Yeah, Senku.
Asa,
Yes.
and Kete.
Perfect.
Okay. Containing music, and the last one at least just came out this year, I think, or very recently.
Yeah, last year, 2020.
Okay. Well, it all feels like one big year since COVID started. Yeah.
Exactly.
And he also, a lot of us in this Zoom room right now know you from your critically acclaimed 5-volume graded anthology, Piano Music of Africa and the African Diaspora, published by Oxford University Press. And I'll just say on a personal note, I've enjoyed so much getting to know this repertoire through your anthology and also some of your recordings. It's truly like almost like a from the very early intermediate level all the way up to big concert pieces. And in at Lawrence over the last few years, we've heard a lot of students and faculty performing this music. You're going to present to us today. Dr. Chapman Yaho is going to present to us a presentation called In and Out of Africa, Exploring Piano Music of Africa and its Diaspora. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Chapman Yaho.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's great. Well, it's an honor to be here or there, virtually, to talk about music by underrepresented peoples, in particular, music by composers of African descent. Um, Composers of African descent have, up until recently, been largely ignored, or I would say it is really within the past year when people were quarantined at home and witnessed the senseless murder of an African American man by name George Floyd, that America and the world, especially the younger generation, decided to stand up and take on the proclamations of Black Lives Matter, a movement that has slowly been brewing and over the years. And interestingly enough, it's really also, by extension become like Black composers matter. And so it is my hope that what I share with you, some of the stuff you may know already or have heard, um, this will be something that I will encourage you to explore and and just try and make it just part of the regular canon of music. And I just want to just say that the books that I put together, compiled, are really scratching the surface and really the whole idea is hoping that it'll give you an idea of what is out there to explore, what is out there to learn, what is out there to program, in your recitals, what is out there worth advocating and even worth writing dissertations on. Um, it's just great music, and I thought I would just show you because sometimes it's really cool to have a lot of visuals. I'm just going to show you some of the composers' faces and some of their music, and also um, I decided I'm going to start off with the African continent. So we're going to start off with music from West Africa, get into Northeast Africa like Egypt, Sudan, and do some music by South African composers before we go into the Caribbean and also the Americas and Europe, in particular England. And I thought I would also play from time to time, not just piano music, but maybe a snippet of a piano quintet, some chamber music, so that you know that there's also this incredible music out there if you're also looking for a chance to be a collaborative pianist with a wonderful person, friend, or musician that you have. There's really good music out there. Talking about styles, you're going to come across so many styles in music by composers of African descent. On the African continent, we would probably tend to call it intercultural music from the fact that a lot of the composers on the African continent tend to want to include traditional musical elements into into their compositions. So you're going to have in Western African, you'll find composers are doing more of a dramistic, what they would call a dramistic kind of music, where the piano is the perfect instrument and not only melodic but percussive, and the piano is used in more of a percussive manner. And when you get into music by composers from Egypt and the Sudan, it's really interesting because the piano is a limited instrument because you have so many different tones. You have tones that may sound like the fourth degree of the scale of a scale, what we'd call a major scale, may seem a little sharp or so, but it's a legitimate scale, and you will have composers trying to create a sense in which the piano using minor seconds or sevenths like that to approximate the half step, that quarter tone. And then you're going to hear composers, usually from South Africa, using more delicate rhythms and, depending on the people from the area who are more nomadic and so use lighter instruments, music, little shekerays and thumb pianos. And so you're going to probably hear something that would reflect that. So let's just start here. And I'm praying because so here are some, just to give you an idea of what's going on. Um, I'm just showing you the kind of books that one can find. Shermer is coming out with more of a complete volume or series of music by Florence Price, an African American composer. There's Samuel Coleridge Taylor's 24 Negro Melodies. Uh, there's a great volume called Salsa Nueve where the music is by Cuban composers primarily. Um, let's look here. Portraits in Jazz by Valerie Capers, a really wonderful pianist who lives in New York City. We'll be talking to her. Kevin Volans, a white South African who's really got some fabulous rhythmic etudes that one should really explore. George Walker, Pulitzer Prize winner. Letty Beckon Alston. She passed away not too long ago, but wrote some really wonderful stuff and even a set of variations on Lift Every Voice. Robert Owens, who lived in Europe, but an African American, wrote some sonatas and clavier suites, but probably more recognized as a vocal composer. Pierre Pradel, a composer from Guadeloupe, so in the Caribbean. And he's written really cool pieces, Sept Pièces Creole, Nathaniel Dett, more Florence Price, my mentor, also Russell, who wrote Jamaican Dances. So there's music. There's quite a music, a lot of music, which is really coming out now. But I will say that I wrote these pieces, put these books together um, in the early 2000s when I went to a conference to advocate music by composers of African descent. A friend of mine by name Dr. Louise Toppin, who is a really wonderful pianist, but the ultimate singer, and she's voice professor at Michigan, just gave me a birthday present ages ago of like of just a big folder of Xeroxes of music by composers of African descent, which just blew me away. And I was thinking, why is all this music in in Xerox? Because a lot of them were out of print, And when I became a professor in Louisiana, I had to teach piano literature courses, and it was great teaching Bach, Beethoven, Chopin, got into 20th century music, got into Spanish music, Eastern European music, some Latin American music. But when it came to music by composers of African descent, it was really difficult putting that together. Very few recordings I could find. One of the great ones was a wonderful set by Natalie Henderas, who was just an amazing pianist. So I put these things together, and Oxford University Press said, well, they would take me on in helping me publish these things, these works. And so we put this thing in 5 volumes and sort of graded them essentially. But it's very hard to find easier pieces. So we have music, volume 1, early, intermediate, getting into advanced, getting into what I'll call recital music for grad students or for college students, essentially. So volumes 4 and 5 are really ones that you can, I'm sure some of you know of this. And these are the CDs that I've been able to come up with of piano music by composers of African descent. So the last one, Kete, is very interesting because I got a lot of requests by piano teachers who wanted to have a sonic representation of this music so that they would know what or how to teach some of this music. So I ended up putting volumes 1 and 2 on the CD called Kete. But let's start with some good music here and composers. Joshua Uzoigwe, wonderful composer who from Nigeria, and he actually studied in Belfast, studied ethnomusicology, but did a lot of composition as well. He ended up in back in Nigeria and was a professor there teaching. We wrote quite a lot of piano music. He wrote a set of variations, some dances, Nigerian dances, a set of pieces called Talking Drums. And he is I would say, an example of, a composer who was really able to meld the whole idea of traditional Nigerian music to with Western musical compositional practices. So the first piece we're going to hear is called Nigerian Dance Number 2. Let's see. So here we have this, and here's a bit of the piece. So you're going, as we go along, you're going to find out there's a lot of what you'd call, maybe an ostinato kind of figure in some of this music. And here's another one called Egu Amala, which suggests storytelling. And it's sort of thought that if you look at the second line going up and down, this figure is maybe what would call the chorus. In traditional West African storytelling, it's not just only for the storyteller to talk about, the story, but the storyteller will probably teach the audience a little tune or something that will probably be sung back to him, and he'll give or she would give a moment where everybody will sort of chime in and say something. So it's really a participatory kind of event, and this is really cool. I remember being a little blown away when I first saw the time signature. It is 19:8. You can see it is 19:8, and it's 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 3 plus 2 plus 3 plus 2 plus 3. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1. And that's the main kind of ostinato drum that you'd probably hear from a particular part of Nigeria. And Joshua Uzoigwe uses this in different ways. He uses this pattern in augmentation, sometimes against. So you're having the right hand in 19/4 essentially, and the left hand in 19/8, and vice versa. But it's really fun to hear, and here it is. Here's the augmentation in the right hand. And it goes on like that. So, so it's a very, very cool piece, and it's a set of, I think, 5 pieces by called Talking Drums. Definitely worth checking out. Another West African composer is Fred Onovuero Swoke, who actually was born in Ghana of Nigerian parents, and so Nigerian Ghanaians also like. I'm from Ghana, so we like to claim him as well. But he is really fabulous, prolific composer, and he's now based in the St. Louis area, and he's written a lot of choral music, a lot of orchestral music, chamber music, and some really cool piano music, as well as this set called 24 Studies in African Rhythm. And you can find these if you search for him on the internet. But they're not long at all, but really capture different styles of African drumming and musics, from the continent. His father, when he was young, his father took him just all over the continent, and he really sort of absorbed all these wonderful musical practices in different parts. So sometimes he may even combine, let's say, music from Uganda, which is in East Africa, with Nigerian music, where there may be a sense of some kind of similarity and quality. But here's one where, again, the rhythmic, we call the rhythmic ostinato dum bum bum ba da 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 da. So it's 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 3 plus 3, and it's a very cool piece called Uje. I think that's just a cool piece. Hope you like that. Another piece he's written on the right side of your screen is called Agbaja. Agbaja is a dance from my father's part of Ghana, which is the eastern, the southeastern part of the country, and it borders Togo. So the borders of West Africa, of all Africa, essentially are artificial. During the early 1900s, if I remember correctly, the Germans, the Italians, the British, the French just decided to carve, Africa into different, just carve it up and take it as their colonies. And so my father's people come from the eastern part, and his cousins and family are also part of Togo, which is French speaking. So it's very kind of arbitrary. But Agbaja would be danced in Ghana, the eastern part of Ghana. It would be danced in the Togo area and probably into Benin, which is the next country over. But what's so cool about this is Fred uses the top part as what would call the cowbell, and then the different layers of rhythms that are used. There's another one which is, and we have to combine them in one hand. And usually you have a third rhythm coming in. So you have something like this. And basically in African drumming or Ghanaian agbaja, you have a master drummer who is using these really deep toned drums, and the drums actually the different rhythms actually determine what the dancer has to move to, and so Fred has the master drum, and you're sometimes required to use the sostenuto pedal just to be able to hold it. And so let's see. So this is what it's going to sound like. Let's see what let's ah. So as you can see, it's really kind of fun and engaging, and it's something I would highly recommend all of you check out. 24 studies in African rhythms, and they're short, sweet, challenging, and programming 4, 5, 6 at a time would be really, really wonderful. So another wonderful composer, this time from Ghana, Robert Kwame, was a few years ahead of me in school. He studied in Achimota School in Ghana, then studied at Reading University and London, and in London as well, and then ended up being a professor in Nigeria and then later on in South Africa. And he wrote quite a number of pieces, and here's one which is based on another rhythm being used in the central parts of Ghana. It's very cool. I will just show you what it looks like. So it starts off with this, and it just slowly builds up, and I will, oops. But as you can see, this is the next few pages, and it just really, it's really cool. So, ay, ay, ay. Oh my goodness. Let's see. Oh no. Oh my goodness. I should have done. So we were trying very hard to be. Wait. What am I going to do here?
You might need to exit out of it and then restart it if you want to go back.
Let's see. Oh.
Or you could do that.
Yeah, this is a new thing on my computer. So hopefully, if I could get to the page before that. So sorry about that. Dear. Um, let's see.
Is it
I
not letting it play?
Yeah, let me see whether ah it did play, so they hopefully it'll go back. This is the Here we go again. I'll try. But I am determined to play this piece for you guys. Um I don't know why I always think of and we all fall down at the end of this piece. So anyway, um it's a joyous piece and it was really fun working on it. So Halim El Dab, I hear some of you have played, or one of you is playing Coma Dance. And Coma Dance, Halim El Dab was a fabulous, wonderful composer from Egypt who actually came to the US to study engineering, agricultural engineering as a student. But he was still composing and he got to meet and work with the likes of Aaron Copland and was encouraged by Stravinsky to continue with his work. Um, I'm going to play a very beautiful, simple piece by him, and again from North Africa, we're moving into music where you have this kind of sound, the augmented second, the minor second, part of Markham's and their kind of scale. And this first one is called Sufyan. It's just an easy, beautiful piece. just love this piece. And it comes from a set of books called Mekta and the Art of Kita. And that's from book two. Book three is much more difficult and still uses some of these titles: Sufyan, Basit, Nawakt. And here is, on the other hand, one of his pieces called Coma Dance. And Coma Dance, he wrote, as he said, was he'd heard that his father back in Egypt had gone into a diabetic coma. And in ancient Egyptian practices, music was used as a healing force. And so all these very fast sort of gestures are supposed to bring energy back into the body. So people would dance around a sick person to bring energy back into their body to heal them. And so this piece is called Coma Dance. It goes on like that. It's very, very full of gestures, very energetic. Gamal Abdel Rahim, another Egyptian composer, wrote a set of uh, wonderful pieces. One for uh, uh, violin sonata, violin sonata piano piece called Variations on an Egyptian Tune. And he also wrote a really cool piano trio, which wasn't actually finished, but is really worth exploring. And the cello is also used as a drumming instrument. It's really very cool and worth checking out. Music by Gamal Abdel Rahim. I'll just play you a little bit of his variations. Again, so this goes on. But really, wonderful set of variations worth exploring. And that's in my anthology volume 3. And Ali Osman, Sudanese composer, also now professor in Cairo, and he's written some really cool pieces for harpsichord. And he was commissioned to write a piece based on the blues, and so he wrote this piece called Afro-Arab Blues. And so you're going to hear again the blues scale with combined with this this tone cluster, which is part of the Makam. And you're going to hear places where the pianist is supposed to uh, use snap their fingers more as a percussive point in the pieces. So here it is. So, really good music there. Very, very distinct. And moving on to music by a South African composer, Bongani Dodana Bream, who I think is one of the foremost South African composers, has written quite a lot of music for, again, piano and orchestra, vocal pieces, and has actually written, recently had his opera on Winnie Mandela premiered. It actually was a few years ago. And, he's just really a wonderful person to be friends with as well. And I'm going to play for you Rituals for Forgotten Faces. Let's see here. Let me, yeah. hate to interrupt this. Yes. And it repeats, yes. And he's written wonderful pieces called Flowers and Sand, which is in volume 4 of the anthology, Umlalo and Lanjani, and Isiko, which was actually premiered recently by a wonderful pianist by name Yale Weiss. Um, uh, you'll be able to find that on YouTube, so to listen to. But Bongani and Donata, definitely look out for his music. Moving to the Caribbean, and I'm running out of time. But moving on to the Caribbean, we have music by Ludovic Lamotte, who was actually born in Port-au-Prince in Haiti and studied in Paris, and apparently was sort of known as the Black Chopin. Um, and because of his virtuosity as well. Um, Ludovic Lamotte ended up back in Haiti and became sort of like a minister of culture, and was actually doing a lot of composition there and wrote a lot of music that would reflect his culture, with merengues and valse caprices, and just written quite a lot of music. And this is one which is called La Dangereuse. It's a merengue Haitian. And listen to the rhythms. These are rhythms that are also found in West Africa. Just really interesting. So you hear a lot of dance music. Another composer from the Caribbean is Ozzy Russell, who was like a mentor of mine when I was a student in Geneva, Switzerland, and just the kindest gentleman and so encouraging. And he wrote a lot of music for marionettes, for wind band, as well as piano music. But he was a concert pianist and professor at the Conservatoire in Geneva, and was also I studied in improvisation with him, and you would find he was so popular in recitals that at the end of a recital he would probably ask somebody to name a tune, and he would improvise over it and just bring the house down after playing a concert, a piano recital which would be themed from Mozart to jazz or something like that. Just a great guy. And he wrote 3 Jamaican dances, which are really beautiful pieces, as well as this piece called Papillon, which I think is just beautiful. And here is actually also Russell playing this piece. Isn't that just absolutely pretty music? Just beautiful. Another Jamaican composer is Ellen Alberga, and she is just really fun. And I got to play a great duet with her, I say with her, with Rhonda Rizzo, who is on who is here. And but I'm going to play a solo piece called "If the Silver Bird Could Speak," and this is in Volume 2. So, but I need to play a bit of this piece called "The Wild Blue Yonder." These are some of her piano pieces, but "Wild Blue Yonder" and "No Man's Land" lullaby is for violin and piano, and this is a bit of her and her husband, who is a violinist, playing this amazing piece. This is just in the middle of it. It just goes on. It's just fabulous and worth checking out. Eleanor Alberga, "Wild Blue Yonder" for violin and piano. Samuel Coleridge Taylor is probably best known for Hiawatha's Feast, some choral music, but he wrote a lot of orchestral and chamber music and piano music. But instead of playing some piano music of his, I'm going to play you the beginning of a piano quintet which will just, well, when I first heard it, it just blew me away. It's, it could be, it's right there with, the greats of any quintet you could think of: Brahms, Mendelssohn, um, anything, trios. But here's his piano quintet. Other pieces are 24 Negro Melodies, African Suites, 3/4 Valse Suite. Beautiful pieces for piano. But here's, oops, ah, my goodness. Ah, this is this is a big, well, oh dear. Oh, I don't know what that's. Ah, here we go.
Ah,
Okay. So I have to run on. But just to let you know, Samuel Corristel was an African British composer. His father was a doctor from Sierra Leone, and his mother was British. And he was really quite precocious and just did a lot of composing. That piano quintet, I think, is Opus 1 of his. And he was very much endorsed by the likes of Elgar, um, whom we know for Pomp and Circumstance and other things like that. Moving on to the Americas, Hale Smith, a great composer, very much also into jazz, and wrote a set of pieces called Faces in Jazz for the intermediate pianist. And here's his offbeat shorty. So you're going to hear in American music by composers of African descent influences of jazz, influences of the blues, influences of dance forms like ragtime, the cakewalk, you know, amongst other, the Negro spiritual, in all kinds of wonderful ways. But this is a set of 12 pieces by Hill Smith, and this is just a cool little piece. And then another person who has written some wonderful pieces for intermediate pianists is Valerie Capers, who has written a wonderful piece for violin, cello, and soprano, and called The Seasons. Definitely worth checking out. And she's primarily a jazz pianist and has a jazz trio in the New York area. She was the first blind person to graduate from Juilliard. And she's just written some wonderful, beautiful pieces called Portraits in Jazz, based on different jazz greats. and she just captures the essence of them. And here's one called Sweet Mr. Jelly Roll. And it goes on like that. And Florence Price, who whose name has become really so well known now, is written of in the New York Times. Um, the first African American to have her symphonies performed by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra in the 1930s. Um, um, Written piano quintets, string quartets, lots of piano music, organ music, and um, and her symphonies and concertos, violin concertos, just a lot of work that has recently been discovered and is now really being performed. Here's a simple piano piece, but I wouldn't call it simple, but just a beautiful, one of the easier level pieces of hers called Silk Hat and Walking Cane. And her music, the Silk Hat and Walking Cane. One thing you probably heard was this cakewalk rhythm, short, long, short, da 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 dum, ba da dum, ba da dum. That's something very that was quite popular in African American music in the early part of the 1900s. There was the cakewalk, which was also becoming the ragtime music of Scott Joplin and all the greats. Um, so that's something you're going to hear in a lot of music as well through the 1900s into the 21st century. Howard Swanson, another great composer, wrote this really cute piece called The Cuckoo, which is in volume three. And it really is a lot of right hand work over back and forth between from the left hand, which is just playing the cuckoo. And here's a So, uh, and he's written two piano sonatas, two nocturnes, a bunch of vignettes. Some of them are very hard to find, and they're in library collections. So these pieces need to be brought out. And again, this is hoping that people will do some more research and demand for this music to be published. Robert Nathaniel Dett wrote great pieces. Probably his most famous piece was Juba Dance, which we will just skim through very quickly. Yeah, so his Juba Dance was really popularized by Percy Grainger, who played it all over the world when he was on tour. But the Juba Dance was also another very popular dance amongst African American people, particularly in the South. And Margaret Bonds, another phenomenal composer, wrote a lot of Negro spiritual arrangements and art song, and she wrote a great set called the Spirituals Suite, of which Troubled Water, some of you I know have heard. And finally, the last two pieces were published this past year, and I just thought it was really overdue for them to be published and made available. But here's just a little bit of her, the beginning of her, based on Wade in the Water. And it goes on. And so music is infused with gospel, with the blues, and just a brilliant composer. And she studied with Florence Price, whose music we heard before. I think I'll finish off with, I have a few more composers, but just for question and answer time, I'll finish off with a snippet of Coleridge Taylor Perkinson, who wrote this really, if I may say so, a hot toccata. And I had the fortune of hearing him play and to talk to him, and he said he always composed a fugal exposition every morning as an exercise. And so when you hear his music, it's full of counterpoints, and this piece is really replete with counterpoint canon and also the blues as well. Just a great piece, and I'll just play a little bit of it and just talk about the rest. So here's a bit of it. So, and just moving on, William Grant Still, known as the Dean of African American Composers, wrote a lot of music. Here you have Three Visions, Bells, Lennox Blues, A Desert Plantation, music for orchestra as well. And and then George Walker, who was a Pulitzer Prize winner, wrote a bunch of sonatas. Number four, which is very intense, full of seconds and thirds, and Leonard Hayes actually got to meet him. Some of you know Lenny Hayes, and did some very wonderful work on George Walker. So I've got to stop here and I'll stop sharing. Hopefully, I won't get cut off here. Let's see. And we'll be happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause through Zoom.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
What wonderful music. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. I would love to open this up for questions, and I'll actually ask the first question because
Yes.
you zoomed through the slide that I was going to ask about, which is resources that we can turn
Oh,
to find beyond your anthology some of this music that's still not published, or other books about the music.
yeah. Okay. I'm afraid to share again, but I can probably name a place to just go explore is africlassical.org. Let me put that in the chat. I believe would work. Africlassical. Classical.org. I believe should work. Chevalier de Saint Georges. Um, that's a really good place to start off with, I think. Um, ah, there, Afric Classical Blogspot. You're ahead of me. Yes.
Yeah.
Hi. Well, I have a question. This is actually based on a project that I'm just starting with a student. A lot of those pieces had these fabulous titles, and I'm wondering if any of them go with poems or texts from Africa or from wherever, other regions.
Um, could you think of I'm sort of drawing a blank in terms of titles like
There was one about the silver bird, that one that really struck
oh
me. But there
yes.
were several others that were very striking, and I thought just wondered whether they were taken from any texts or not.
I do not think so.
Okay.
I do not have any. No, I don't. Except for little titles like Deep River, which is taken from the Deep River Negro Spiritual.
Right.
Um, so most of them might have been taken, if they're African American. My Lord, Didn't It Rain, or Poor Mona's Got to Home at Last. Okay, it's coming back. Would be based on Negro spiritual titles.
Right. Right.
Yeah, but it is definitely worth checking out the words. The
Ah,
words for those. To help with the way one plays it. You know,
exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
absolutely. Thank you. Yes.
Hi. I was just thinking about how you said initially when you were teaching piano lit,
Yes.
it was kind of difficult to find these pieces prior to you publishing these anthologies. And I know that there are, of course, more resources available now, but I was just sort of curious what your research process was for finding those pieces. Because you also said like your birthday present was the Xerox copies, but
Yeah.
like a lot of them were out of print. So I was just curious how you went about that.
So, a great repository of music by composers of African descent is the Schomburg Institute, Schomburg, or I think, or Berg, Schomburg, in Institute in New York. It's part of the New York Public Library. And I got some really interesting things there and saw some amazing manuscripts of, violin music and string quartets. Yes. Oh, thank you, Michael. Um, so the Schomburg was a place I went and, just rummaged through. And another place, the Amistad collection in New Orleans is another place that has quite a lot of stuff. And unfortunately, there was the Center for Black Music Research, which ended up being defunded. It was part of the Columbia College, so I went there too and saw some of the manuscripts of Margaret Barnes and so on and so forth. But that's been dispersed all over. It's just really tragic. Um, so, and then some of it was just kind of contacts, knowing other contacts and asking some of the composers if they were willing to contribute. And some actually wrote for the anthology, like Wallace Cheatham wrote these 3 preludes based on Negro spirituals. So, yeah.
Louise, did you have a question?
I do. Sorry about the talking dog here, but I'm recovering from surgery, so I'm talking to you from a bed here. So I want you to see my picture. My question, my local association is going to be doing a themed competition in a couple of years on African music. And of course, so then we're looking for pieces of that younger students can play. And so we've got one idea about that, where we're thinking about seeing if we can take some of the melodies and transcribing them into easier ways, into easier music for our young students. But one thing that you mentioned, William, was Halim Eldad. You mentioned his piece, Mekta in the Art of Kita, and you said that was from book 2. Is book 1 available?
Yeah. I think sometimes book 1 is coupled with book 2 because it's very it's basically the melodic lines or so. So the score I had was from Peter's edition, so you could find that. Yeah. Also, a person you need to check, you need to talk to would be Dr. Leah Claiborne. Leah Claiborne, Claiborne. Leah Claiborne.
Okay.
And
did she just do a presentation for Francis Clark?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then I know who she is.
Yeah. Yes. She's definitely also doing stuff and would have a lot of good resources. Florence Price wrote some really easy pieces for the piano as well. So I think it would be really worthwhile checking and asking her for that.
Okay.
We've been actually collaborating with the Royal Schools of Music in England to suggest music for grades 1 through 8 of music by composers of African descent. So she's a great resource person as well.
Okay, I'll check that out. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
This was great.
Great, thank you.
Do other students have questions? I'll ask one more question since I'm the one teaching piano lit this term,
Oh,
and many of those students are here. And one thing we've talked about is just the instrument itself and how it made its way to different parts of the world.
yeah.
Do you have a sense in the research you've done for how the piano instrument, because some of these composers are mimicking the sounds of some other instruments from folk traditions, or maybe studied in other places and then are writing music that are connected to different parts of the world. But do you know about the instrument? Was the instrument present in different parts of Africa from certain points in time?
Pretty much so. Yeah, the piano was around. I think in the late 1800s, definitely on the African continent. And it's interesting that you should talk about the way the piano is being used. Um, I had a friend who had been living in Myanmar who said the piano was just used in a totally different way, and just the way the people played it too, even not in the usual finger like way we play it, but sort of kind of use. It was very very interesting. So I would say probably the piano's used. I think the piano is used probably maybe in a more traditional way on the African continent, and people would just try and transcribe um, what was in traditional music onto the piano, just try and plonk it out. Yeah,
Thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
Well, I mean, really just there's so much endless piano music, and it seems like so many composers are so interested in expressing their ideas through the piano, and it always makes me wonder why that is. We grow up hearing a lot of Germanic music and we take it for granted, the sound of the piano, but why that instrument is such a repository for different compositional ideas.
Yeah, um, I would say maybe one of the wonderful things about the piano uh, is its really precise percussive nature, which you hear in traditional music on the African continent. I would say, as a and even bowed instruments, traditional bowed instruments are really not played much like the violin, though. So I don't know. It's interesting. And for example, I'm I'm working on a piece by a Turkish composer, a piano duet, and it's the opening is supposed to sound like an oud. So basically the piano is just perfect where you just uh, uh, something like that. So more like a plucked. It could be used like a plucked instrument. I don't know.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
thank you.
Yeah.
Any other last questions? Well, I want to thank you so much for spending this time with us. You've been,
My pleasure. Absolute pleasure. It was just a real blast to be able to come and play. And pardon the little moments.
I think every single one of us can relate to that.
Yes.
In fact, we're very relieved when we see it happen to somebody else, and so we're grateful to you. Thank you.
My pleasure.